Enough lollygagging there, chief. All right, let's call to order the Spark City Council meeting for March 20th at 1 o'clock with a roll call.
Mayor Lawson,
Here.
council members Abbott,
Here.
Vanderwell,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Bybee,
Here.
Durr,
Here.
City Attorney Duncan, Acting City Manager Crawforth.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Mark Anderson, will you lead us in the pledge? That was just for you, Donald. Yep. Okay. Let's move on to public comment. Madam Clerk, you have any public comment?
I did not receive any public comment, Mr. Mayor.
No public comment. Approval of the agenda. Any changes? If not, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda. Mr. Dare
I move to approve of the agenda as submitted.
and Mr. Abbott.
Second.
Okay. And any more discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, 6, announcements, presentation, recognition. And we are on to interviews with and discussion of the following city manager candidates listed in alphabetical order: Aaron Kubik and Dion Latham. And Aaron's up first.
Come on down.
The way we,
Hello, nice to see you again. Hello.
Aaron, good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Hi.
Very good to see you.
Okay. The green mic is the live one.
Ooh, it is.
Yep, so be careful what you say under your breath. Are you gonna start off with a statement, or do you want us just to start firing questions?
Well, if you'd like me to start with a statement, I can shoot from the
Okay.
hip and give you a statement.
Why not?
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I'd
Trying
like,
to get to know you also.
okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for choosing me as one of the finalists. I'm extremely excited. My family's extremely excited. And even my colleagues have been so supportive of this, recognizing what a great opportunity this would be for me as an individual, both professionally and personally. And I have, toured your community a couple times, and you may not know this, but I've been looking for the city of Sparks for a number of years, and to be here in the Northern Nevada area. I am committed to the communities where I work. I have been a city manager for 20 years in the state of Oregon with 2 communities. I'm one of the longer-standing city managers in the state of Oregon at 12 years for one city. I do that because I think it's important I choose a city to work in that it's about a quality of life issue. It's not about a climbing ladder issue. So I try to choose my communities wisely, and what you have to offer, you as your leadership, watching how you perform on the dais, watching how you treat each other with respect, watching how you value what would be my colleagues is so refreshing. You deal with a lot of tough issues, and you do them with professionalism, and you lead by example. Doing that makes a job for someone like myself much easier. And I can tell you, it's just refreshing to see that. And you may disagree or whatever, but you've done a great job. That is one of the things that inspired me when I started to do my research in Sparks when I saw this posting, was how you performed. And I didn't know the details fully about how the organization performed, but I saw how you performed and how you treated each other. That was a big win right off the bat. And then exploring more within the organization. Every organization has troubles and challenges and issues. We all are facing them. And I'm ready to conquer those and try to come up with great opportunities for the city of Sparks. In general, I think your organization and what would be my colleagues are great group of individuals from what I've met today. Very engaged. When I went around and we did the tours today, had wonderful questions from each group. And that was just exciting. It was exciting to see them right there and have a conversation with them. And so from a professional perspective, the size of the community, the future challenges that the city of Sparks has is a perfect match for where I want to be. And from a personal perspective, that's the other aspect of it also, is the city of Sparks, the area, this surrounding area, the natural beauty is so complementary to the active lifestyle that I like to have. The water sports, the snow sports, outdoor sports, soccer, whatever it is, the hiking, the off-roading, it's all things that are great. So when you put those things together, and then also you put together the pride that you see around Sparks when I visited Sparks, look at the things that you're doing, the new fire station, the amazing recreational facilities you have. That is because you've got a community that's really proud, and you've got a community that supports you and wants to continue to support this organization. And I would really love to have an opportunity to be part of that family.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna start, we're gonna go 5-1 and then 1-5, so be prepared.
Sure. So I'll just ask a couple because I'm sure my colleagues have some similar questions. I don't want to hog it all, so
Okay.
I'll start on a couple things that I
Just
think.
ask one question.
I'll start one?
One question.
get one.
One, and then we'll give everybody.
I
a
better
chance
get
to
a
ask.
pen and paper here.
I'm going to do a run-on
This
sentence
is not,
then.
this is not a solo
Lots of
effort.
commas,
Well, that's what I
semicolons.
was saying. Well, let's just talk about regional leadership here for
One
a second.
question.
One of the things in your background, we have the opportunity to serve on many regional boards, and I think bring what I would call is the Sparks way of doing things into our region and try to help guide. And Reno has their things, and Washoe has their things. We have strengths, weaknesses, you name it. But we pride ourselves that we actually get to be in a lot of leadership positions. We get to be out there and make a difference. Have you seen that and where you come from? How would you come here to help enhance that and honor that and value that? Because that's something that I think your relationship with our colleagues that are in Reno and Washoe County is very important to us.
Certainly, great question. So when it comes to regional boards, I think it's extremely important. If you look at my resume, there's a long list of regional boards that I've historically participated in, whether it be a transportation, a regional board, whether it be an industrial development regional board, whether it be a community development and housing regional board. I think it's extremely important that someone in the position that represents the city is present. Sometimes I've taken a back seat if a council member so desires to have that seat, because sometimes a seat has an ex officio, there's an ex officio seat. Sometimes it's designated to council member or the mayor, or sometimes it's open for the city manager. Work in partnership with the city council on their interest also for those items. But you should be seen and present a very professional atmosphere representing those boards and commissions, and it's extremely important. I'm a firm believer of those. I am a past president of the Oregon City Managers Association and a past board member there. I also have had the honor to be recommended to be this city manager's representation on the League of Oregon Cities board. And I serve currently right now on the League of Oregon Cities for the state of Oregon. And it's a real honor to be able to do that. I'm trying to show you that I think boards, regional and statewide, are extremely important. They're important because they build relationships. And one of the things that we need to make sure that we're aware of is that we cannot consider ourselves an island. If you do so, you're already you're putting yourself in a box. And each one of those memberships, when you represent yourself professionally and you're there and as a colleague and a team member, you are only strengthening your opportunity to do wonderful things within your community.
Thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I want to ask about what you feel is perhaps the biggest challenge coming into the city of Sparks. You've talked about a lot of the great things, which obviously we all agree with you on, but the biggest challenge that you anticipate, couple of things, obviously, come in from the outside. That's new for the city of Sparks. We've traditionally hired from within. It's been a long time since we've had someone come from somewhere else into our city. So really, as you look forward, should you get this position, what is your, what would you think would be your biggest challenge, and kind of what your priority would be maybe addressing that challenge?
Excellent. And that's an extremely good perspective. I utilize something similar to that when I do my employee orientations. I meet with all new colleagues that come on board, and I tell them, you know what, you've got something I'm so jealous of, and I've lost, and you have. And that is the optics of a new colleague, an optics to look at an organization differently and look at the community differently, and to be able to utilize that and help me utilize what I once lost is a jewel. So, yeah, Sparks has challenges, just like so many other municipalities throughout the nation have challenges. I think, looking and doing my research, I think one of the challenges you have is a budgetary issue, challenges. If you look at your 23 budget, your carryover was about 24.5% or something like that. It was about $23 million. You're looking at having, and for 2026, you're looking at bringing that down to about 9% or just about $9 million. So you're drastically, slowly reducing those reserve funds that you have. That's not sustainable. And there's a number of things that are going to need to be looked at, some tough decisions that are going to have to be discussed. We're going to have to definitely reach out to the community and try to determine how best to find solutions to the revenue and expenditure gap that you have, and look at all of the different options. That's something that we're addressing. I'm addressing also at the state of Oregon, and so it's not new, but that is definitely a challenge. Another challenge that's not unique either, but it is definitely there, and I saw that also in my tours. Thank you very much for the tours today. But your housing, and the associated land available for housing, but also the infrastructure to support the housing. It's for, say, for instance, your sewer plant and other things. There are going to be limitations to potential growth if we don't try to do some long-range planning now, and it needs to be done now in order for us to try to maintain that growth that Sparks community is going to be facing in the near future. So.
Mr. Anderson?
Thought you were gonna be between us, no?
I'm the rose between two thorns.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that sounds like a Bret Michaels song or something like that.
If you
Jeez.
only knew. No, Aaron, thank you for joining us here today. And so my first question has to do with your decision-making process. So as you're going through that, at what point in time do you decide to reach out to others on your team for some support, advice, and then why?
Okay. So thank you for the question. I have every other week one-on-one meetings with my executive team, and the executive team also meets on a weekly basis where we talk issues. So I'll have, say, for instance, maybe it's a public safety issue, maybe it's a police issue, maybe it's a public works issue, whatever it is. And that department head will come and talk to me about a potential challenge that we'll have in the future that may need some direction from this city manager's office. And we talk in general about it, and the majority of the time, after we've talked about it, it is an item that we say, let's bring this to the X team. And I funnel a lot of the decisions that may solely be by charter the responsibility of the city manager to my executive team. I do that because that's just my leadership style. I'm collaborative in nature. I like to communicate, and I like people to know what I know. And as I've said before in the tours this morning, I'm likely not the smartest person in the room. So if I can give people the information that I have and we could talk about it together, we'll usually come up with better opportunities and better ways to solve the challenges. So what I do, unless it's a little minor thing, we'll work it out with the department head and go ahead. But a lot of the times we bring it up that way. And I do that also for another reason. I do it because of the mentoring aspect that it has associated with it. So say, for instance, a public works director is having an issue with someone with the collections crew. And if him and I just talked about it, or her and I just talked about it, then it would be done, we'd solve it, we'd probably come to a good conclusion. But who else was able to learn from that experience? Just the two people in the room. So if we bring some challenges from other departments and divisions into the room and we have a discussion about it, then we all can learn from those experiences and be stronger as a team.
Vanderwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so our employees are like our most valuable asset here in the city. And so, and we've had a lot of changes over the last year, and we're about to do another big change. So what would you do to help the employees through the change and also let them know that everything's going to be safe and secure and there's not going to be a lot of drastic changes?
Well, that's a key to, I think, building trust in general. You've got the trust of maybe a new city manager coming on board. You've got the trust associated with potential change mechanisms that might be occurring within the organization. So there's a lot of change in potentially unknown and instability. And I want to touch on the word that I purposely said, which was unknown. When you have an unknown, it usually gets filled with negative thoughts. So it's extremely important that when you're looking at making changes or change are occurring, that you are as transparent and upfront with the information as much as possible, and you involve the individuals that might be impacted sooner than later. So when it comes to maybe building culture within the organization or a new change that is associated with the budget or whatever, you bring them in at the forefront. You let them know what the issues are. You say, hey, you know what? We're going to be going through it. And you might not have the answers. I don't know what the answer is. I don't. But guess what? This is what I know. This is the way we're going to look at trying to accomplish that or to tackle that objective. So you've got to have the integrity from the beginning. You've got to make sure that you have clarity with the message that you're providing. And then you've got to start delivering on your results when you start saying that. And when you do those things, then you start to build that trust within the organization and within the potential topic of what that change might be.
Mr. Abbott?
Perfect. Could you describe the last person you promoted and kind of your thought process on how you got there with that individual?
Last person.
Thinking, you know, like you mentioned your executive team before bringing them in, or is that just maybe something you just made unilateral, or?
No, when it comes to the last person I promoted, it would be, so I'm responsible for the department heads and the IT manager, and I think the last person that I promoted would have been, and it's twofold actually in both of these situations, both the community development director and the public works director. So in both of those positions, we did a national recruitment because I had two positions, those two individuals that were there for like 20 years. And that was wonderful. We had in public works, we had some great other people that had been there for a long time. Our community development program was a little young, but either way, we did a national recruitment. And through the national recruitment, had discussions with some of the potential internal candidates. And so in both situations, and I'll just talk specifically about the public works, so I'm trying to deal with both of them. In public works, I had a water treatment plant supervisor that had been with the city for, at that time, about 22 years. This is someone that from my day one that I made a connection with because that's just the type of person he is. He is someone that really believes in culture, that really admires high-performing organizations, wants to get things done, and his department was doing a great job producing great clean water for our community. And so slowly over time, we'd bring him in from a mentor perspective on different projects and those kind of things. So when this position came open, he was not qualified at all on paper. He was a water treatment plant supervisor. And we're talking public works that was in charge of water, wastewater, transportation, stormwater, et cetera. We looked at some wonderful candidates from outside the state of Oregon, inside the state of Oregon that had wonderful credentials. But the current water treatment plant supervisor had that, coin the word spark, that the other candidates didn't have. And that was that spark that I knew we needed within the organization. That person that was a servant leader, that person that cared about their colleagues. That's the type of person we needed in public works because we had a number of different divisions that needed that caring. And it was something I never second guessed. Worked with him on slowly bringing him up to speed on things and certifications and getting up to speed and responsibility. But it was well worth the extra mentoring on the in front end, because the end result was we have an amazing department director that does amazing things with our colleagues.
You can go
Did I-
again, Mr. Abbott.
Did I answer the question? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kubik, just kind of asking you to be reflective a little bit. Over the last 5 years, is there something from a leadership perspective or a leadership skill set that you've improved upon that you weren't as good at 5 years ago? And then presently, is there something that, from a leadership perspective or skill set, that you feel like you want to keep improving upon to be able to lead into the future?
Yeah, great questions. So the thing that I believe I've improved on over the past 5 years that I wanted to focus on improving, and this is part of being a credential manager through the International City Managers Association. You're always supposed to look at yourself internally and figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are, and I try to build off of both. What am I doing great that I can do more of? But also take a look at my weaknesses. And one of the things that I wanted to do better at was I wanted to be better at facilitating my own meetings, my XT meetings, better at facilitating community forums and other type of meetings. I had a general idea of what's successful and that kind of thing, but there is a true framework associated with that, and in order to make it really successful. So I took some additional training. I'm certified as a certified facilitator through Leadership Strategies, and that made a difference in me, and it made a difference in the product that I was producing for the city. I'm seen as the go-to facilitator for maybe some difficult situations and difficult community topics. And in order to get the people together to talk about it, to come up with some good creative solutions to get back to council. And council appreciates that skill set that I have. That skill set would not have been developed if I didn't look internally at myself and say, what do I need to do to be better? So that's the one that I've been working on in the past 5 years that I think I've gotten better over the 5 years. What I would like to work on now is, and one of those goals that I'm trying to do, is I want to be better at conflict management. There seems to be a lot of conflict out there wherever you look. And, sure, I've got some skill sets for that, but I want to be better at conflict management. So that's a focus that I'm trying to do from a professional development perspective in the future, and hopefully I'll be able to execute those skills in a better format than I'm doing now. Not that I'm not doing well now, but I want to try to sharpen those skills.
Okay, Mr. Abbott.
On your quick tour today, was there anything that stuck out to you that you think that, that you could already fix, or an idea already got some gears turning for you, just from what you saw? I know it's this short, you just hopped around, but.
It was a short hop around and everything. There's things that I'd love to dive into, like fee structures, like recreational fee structures and system development charges when it comes to housing production and those type of policies. There are things that I would like to dive into, but the tour, of course, didn't go into that great of detail. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good, thanks.
Ms. Vanderwall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recently, the City Council, we ratified something in our policy regarding homeless people sleeping in their cars, which we received a lot of backlash. So you are coming from Grants Pass, and you have the Johnson versus Grants Pass lawsuit coming up. So can you explain that and how it's being handled, and if we had an issue like that coming here, how you would handle it?
Yeah, I can try to stay relatively broad, but because the case is still being heard in the
Yes.
Supreme Court, I want to be careful about what I say. So at least that's what the attorneys told me.
Because of that.
So-
Very general, just an educational of what the lawsuit is
Yeah,
for the public, because there's some misconception of what that lawsuit's about.
yeah. The lawsuit really is about involuntary or voluntary homeless individuals, their ability to find a resting place in public spaces. And what started this whole thing for the city of Grants Pass is not unique. Everyone else is feeling it. We just happen to be at the tip of the spear. We did provide a citation for somebody who was resting in the park, taking up park space, and that's what triggered that. It triggered an Eighth Amendment issue. It was playing off of the Boise case also. It expanded the Boise case. Boise case was saying, hey, if you don't have services, you need to try to get services in place. Ours was, well, if you don't have services, and you don't have service in place, then you have to let them rest in public spaces. And then our case also provided in another layer, which was an injunction. And the injunction said, okay, one, you don't have enough beds, you have to allow them somewhere, and they can be in the parks. The injunction said they can be in all of our parks but one park. And the injunction also provided time, place, and manner when that can happen. You know, they can be there at a certain time of day, and didn't say they had to take their tents down or anything like that, but that they could occupy space in the parks for resting. So over the past few years, I have to give a lot of kudos out to our police department and the service providers in our community. We have followed the letter of the law of that injunction to a T and done everything we can to make sure that we have a good case going to the Supreme Court. That takes a lot of patience on the public safety side, on the police department side. It takes a lot of patience on the community side, because we keep saying we're trying to get this resolved and fixed. So the injunction basically required, and the lawsuit required us at this time, to provide for public resting spaces in the parks. Of course, we appealed that to the Ninth Circuit Court. The Ninth Circuit Court stated that, no, we lost in the Ninth Circuit Court, and that we also were trying to ask the question, do they have the ability to stay warm and dry, or safe and dry? And they expanded that, yes, there's some need for that also. And so it expanded it even a little bit more, and so we appealed to the Supreme Court. Currently, right now, the state of Oregon also, though, has, all cities have had to implement, due to legislation, time, place, and manner regulations. So ultimately, the win would be, if we go to the Supreme Court, the win would be that the Supreme Court would tell the Ninth Circuit Court that the injunction would need to dissolve, and we would have the ability to create our own time, place, and manner regulations. And we tried to get creative with those. We tried to put, say, for instance, buffers along park walkways, buffers along playground equipment, and places where children congregate, whether it be a 20-foot buffer or a 50-foot buffer from whatever, to provide an opportunity where you could still rest, but you can't place a structure in those areas. And then started to designate where structures could be placed and et cetera, without doing a state-created danger. So the state-created danger is if you, as a municipality says, you can't be in this park, but you can go here. That's a state-created danger, because then you're telling them they can go here, which means then if you don't have services for them, you're creating a danger for yourself. So then you need to have restrooms, you have maybe laundry, security, et cetera. Once you designate a spot for them to go, you are taking on that additional risk and liability.
All right, so you actually just explained one problem that you faced in your organization. So I'm going to ask you if you even want to use the same one but kind of expand on it, that's fine. But what I want to know is a major problem that your organization and community faced, how you communicated with all the stakeholders, and how did you let them know that you were going to take care of it?
Well, I guess I can touch on, that is definitely one. I'll give you another example, though, too, that funding for police and fire. It's an issue that we have in Grants Pass. We've been working on that for years. And so expenses are outpacing revenues, just like in many communities. It took a long time. It took a number of years of continual discussions with the community and with the council to express what the concerns are and what the issues were. Mapping out, long-range planning, what are we looking at? Here's the budget. Here's the projections of the budget. Here's the projections of expenditures. Here are some of the issues that we're having. And through that, we had public forums with the community. We had surveys for the community on different things. We looked at multiple different funding options on how to fund public safety. I've been asked to do, and at the upcoming League of Oregon Cities Conference, I'll be doing a session on alternative funding sources to public safety services. Because the state knows that we're really trying to work on this. Grants Pass has really hit out there. So there are a variety of financing tools and/or budget cut tools that we can use, and we've used them all. We've looked at many of them. And so currently right now, we, based on survey results that we receive from the community, both in public meetings like this or through actual electronic surveys that we provided to the community expressed a desire for 2 of the 7 type of funding sources. They expressed a desire for a utility fee to pay for police and fire, and they expressed of the scenarios, not that they said they wanted it, but the ones that they were most favorable to. The other was a food and beverage tax. So we have now since implemented a utility fee at $12 a month, and we are moving through the steps slowly to look at implementation of a food and beverage tax. Now, I've talked with council about that, and I think that we need to move slowly on that process because we need to make sure we're coming along lockstep with the community and not get out too far in front with decisions before they've had a chance to weigh in, or it's just gonna get you at the end. So it's about, I think I answered all those questions. Yes? Okay.
Ms. Bybee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Aaron, how do you view your role in the community? If you're selected for this position, describe specifically how you would propose to become engaged in this community.
So, as my intro sort of said, community is really important to me. I'm always actively involved in the community in some form or fashion. I like being involved in civic groups and volunteering my time to clean up the park or do whatever. I think that's extremely important, being seen out there and doing those kind of things. I try to match some of my community involvement with my own personal passions. Say, for instance, right now, I've coached the varsity soccer team for the girls' high school program. It's a 6A program, and I've been their coach for the past 6 years. And before that, I was associated with the boys' program for 6 years. And that's an excellent way for me to be out in the community, and I get seen in a different light than just as a city manager. And the amount of people that I get to see and visit with is exciting when I get to do those things. I've coached little rec leagues and all those kind of things just to be out in the community and be seen. I think coaching is one of my strong points. I've also been on the Timbers, MLS Timbers coaching staff, and have done camps throughout the state of Oregon for them. And I was a head Olympic development coach for soccer for U16 boys. So that's a real honor. So I try to utilize some of my strengths there to be part of the community. But the key is for me to be available, and part of it is just for me to be available. Walk around, not only within the organization, which I like to do, but to be seen at the community events. I don't think I need to wear, hey, I'm the city manager, come look at me, because that's not necessarily my style. My style is to make sure that the elected officials are the ones that are getting the kudos. I don't mind if someone's like, hey, who's the city manager? Well, I don't know who's the city manager. I'm here to make sure the organization is running as effectively and efficiently as possible. I'm here to support the elected officials. And so, but I do so naturally being active in the community by getting out there and being involved in the community events, doing the 5K run, and doing, getting together a team from the city to do a softball game or a tournament or whatever it is. So besides the philanthropist groups like Kiwanis or Rotary and those kind of things, which are all givens that you're members of those type of groups, I like to try to be involved in things that are important to me also.
Mr. Dare?
So you mentioned already, but I want to bring, obviously our city is definitely diverse. We have our senior population, which are a lot of retirees coming here, fixed incomes. We have our young struggling. A lot of us have kids who can't live here because the housing is where it's at. And, various income levels, our Spanish community is growing. You name it, all different things that are happening right here. It's quite a bit to walk in and say, we're going to bring economic development and housing. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, there's so many unintended consequences with almost anything we do. So how do you involve them? How do you bring people to the table? How do you help walk this out where we, in the end, it's not just us as city council or city manager or staff, but we as a city, we really took it somewhere and we grew and if you understand that question.
Sure. Whenever you're looking at potential policy decisions or looking at growing a policy decision, getting the right people at the table is important, and being inclusive on that. We try to do that from an organization perspective, no matter what. We have cross-organizational individuals working together as teams that might not work together as teams, just so you can get a different perspective on things. And I think the same thing rings true for whether it's an economic initiative within the city or if it's a housing issue within the city, et cetera. It's listening to the city council and where they think those interests might be. It's having your ear at the events and talking to people in the community so you can sort of connect the dots. I try to connect the dots based on all the input that I get, and that helps paint a picture and on who and what might be impacted by those potential policy decisions that'll be made in the long run, and getting them at the very forefront of the discussions is important. And so you do that through just continued outreach. I know you talk about the different advisory committees they have openings for at the council meetings and that kind of thing, and it's those little things. If you do a bunch of little things right, then those pieces will start to come together. But you've got to want to have that happen. You've got to have a desire to be inclusive and to get it, and it takes a little bit more time, but the product at the end is always usually better. And you do have a lot of diversity in the community. You've got a lot of diversity, not just from a people perspective, but you've got a lot of diversity from an infrastructure perspective. I mean, you've got clearly quadrants of your city that are different. And to bring those in is difficult. Well, you need to spend your resources here. What about the 80% over here? And how do you balance all of that? I mean, you definitely have some of those things that you can optically almost see through the tour that I saw today.
You can ask another question.
I'll ask one more.
I'm not giving the chief a chance to ask a question. Sir.
I'll do one more for sure. So I'm assuming you did some homework on our property tax issues, our lands bill issue, and what we're trying to do. And we are definitely believe that cities are not sustainable. You've used that word, and I will say you are correct. However, we have the great job of figuring that out. But what are some of your approaches to try to solve that? Because, I mean, we've been chipping away, screaming, shouting, jumping on boards, making our voice known in DC at state levels. And so I'm way open to somebody who's going to come in and say, we're going to go after this, and maybe here's how. So we believe the lands bill will go through, and obviously I'm very optimistic. I also believe property tax will change at some point. I'm obviously way too optimistic. But anyway, with that said.
No, the lands bill thing going through would be a big win, and I think that's great. And you are broaching a topic that I'm familiar with also, not from a Nevada standpoint, but from an Oregon standpoint also. And I believe from my knowledge of Nevada is also tax reform is needed at the state level. And just like in the state of Oregon, tax reform is needed at the state level. And that's a tough one. Sometimes those are voter approved, and so how do you deal with that issue? We've been dealing with for decades, since the mid-90s. I think in order for things to change, it's not only Oregon, it's not only Nevada, it's other states that are still also dealing with the same thing, especially when a lot of the revenue is a large portion of the revenue, like yours is based on property taxes, but with a broken property tax system where, say, for instance, just like in the state of Oregon, when a house sells, it doesn't get assessed at the sale price, right? And so how does that work? And so there's so many inequities on people, neighborhoods, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not good for anybody. So I think what Sparks can do, if you haven't already, but you're right, you have to be a champion at the national level, but I think a lot of it starts here at the state level, and have to be seen as a professional and a champion at the state level to get some reform done and get the backing and support and build the relationships with the other fellow municipalities to have a strong front at that. Get the support of the league to maybe also help with the funding of a special case study or something along those lines to come up with some real solutions make sure you're lobbying the right individuals at the state level and make sure you know who to lobby for that, to try to get some support on creating some reform. Can't be drastic, probably won't fly. But if you can do some moderate reform to some things, you could potentially create some steam just from that concept, because everyone is feeling this tightness that Sparks is feeling right now.
Ivy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The leadership style of the city manager is critically important to the city's success. How would staff in your current city describe your leadership both positively and negatively?
Oh, let's see. You know what? Hold on a second. I think I can answer that for you. I pull out my phone just because we just did, one of the things that I do is I do an organizational survey, satisfaction survey of my colleagues, because I want to know what we can do and improve on. And to answer your question, some of the things that they say about me in the survey, no, we did an organizational satisfaction survey, and it wasn't about me, it was about the organization. So I was actually very honored that I was mentioned in it. And some of the things they said is, we have a great city manager who empowers employees at all levels. The city manager does a great job of guiding the city through the challenges we face. We need to continue to support him to be a successful organization. Continue the annual barbecues, cookouts, employee appreciations, visits on the holidays from the city manager. These small things are things that mean a lot to the employees. I think the HBO culture that Aaron has brought to us is an amazing way to run an organization. I know that I have a voice, and so do my coworkers. I believe that we have some of the best individuals in the community. Those are just.
Did you coordinate that?
I really like that Aaron Kubik is a servant leader. He also he encourages with the employees and is always very positive. I believe that organization needs as much positive influence as we can get in these unknown and uncertain times. Thanks for the question.
Time means everything. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah. I believe, though, that wasn't there negative? What about, that was the second part of the question, so actually.
The second part, that was how they described you positively. If they had anything negative to say about your leadership, what would that be?
There were a couple of comments in there when it comes to my leadership style, thinking that I should be stronger to council. Stronger in pushing an agenda to council. And that's ultimately my decision. And I know that I need to be able to sleep at night. I provide council with unbiased information and information so they can make an informed decision. It's not my job to push you one way or the other, or to push an agenda. There's multiple times throughout the year that I may not agree with a decision the council made. No one will ever know about it, because I support council's decision 100% and I move on.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you for not using that one against me, so, yeah. No. So tell me about your professional passion. You've mentioned passion in different areas in your personal life.
Yep.
But your professional passion, and how has that helped build the city you're at now and move things forward?
My professional passion is, besides being collaborative and really high on communication, I just care. I truly care about my colleagues. I care about the community. I care about the kids I coach. My passion is truly in, and I get so much energy out of working for organizations like Sparks, because I'm working with a group of colleagues that care for more than they care. They want to build community. They're choosing public service to build community. That's what I care about. I'll give you an example. So Reading Across America was a campaign that we were doing at our schools 2 weeks ago. So this just happened 2 weeks ago. So I was asked to come and read a book to the third graders. So I picked One Fish, Two Fish, Blue Fish, Red Fish by Dr. Seuss. So I read that book. I'm like, one fish, two. I said, this fish is sad. This one is very, very bad. You know, and my youngest kid is now 21, so it's been a long time since I was reading a book like that. But at the end, the kids were asking me questions, and one kid said, do you like your job? And I said, yes, I do. And here's why. So you got to know your target audience, so I know what question to ask. How many of you kids have been to our new splash park? Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, the barrel's cool. I had a part in making that happen. That's why I love my job. I had a part in planning that and getting that implemented, and now I get to see all you people have tons of fun at the splash park. Oh, okay, that's really cool, yeah. What about fire trucks? Yeah, we, we purchase fire trucks, but I don't drive the fire trucks, But and then the other thing that was really neat about that at the end was there was parents that were there also for the book reading, and a parent came up to me and said, "That's my daughter right over there. I want to thank you for the way you did that project because you asked kids to come and be on a task force to pick out what should be in that splash park, and my kid was the one that helped pick out those items. So thank you." If I had a mic, I'd drop it right now. I mean, that's my passion. That's why I do what I do, and I try to build healthy culture within the organization so everyone can be a leader and find that passion within themselves also, and try to facilitate an opportunity to work to their strengths to where they can grow that and be the best for the organization as possible.
Vanderwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was asked earlier about working with regional partners and things like that. So you don't only have to work with regional partners, but you also have to work with our state legislators and also our federal delegation. So explain to me how you do that now with the city of Oregon.
I pick up my cell phone and I call them. So I've got two reps in my phone. I call them, I talk to them about issues. Also, I rely heavily on the League of Oregon Cities and our legislative team that we have. We have a great legislative team that'll send me shout outs on a regular basis. Hey, Aaron, have you talked to this? Do you have any connections with this rep? Yeah, I met him twice. Can you give him a call and let him know about this measure that's coming up? Or I'll get some information there and I'll send it to the council and the mayor and I'll say, hey, here's a draft letter. If you just put your name on this thing, we get it off. It'd be really helpful, but it needs to be due by Friday. Of course, I get the message like Wednesday night or something like that. So it's about being a good representative, being on the League of Oregon Cities and being a board member there. It's about being seen as a professional in your field and being recognized for that. And it's about just making sure you're making contacts with those individuals as before they're elected and then after they're elected.
Mr. Abbott.
Perfect. Describe how you build and maintain a positive relationship with the city of Sparks. And I think you mentioned it earlier, we have individuals that work 24/7 shifts. They work, you mentioned about showing up on the holidays I heard earlier, which I think that's awesome. But I guess how would you build that with everybody? We got lots of people all across the valley that are working for the benefit of our community as a whole. Yeah,
so it does take some focused energy. It takes focused energy because, one, I want to be genuine with my time. And so how do I build relationships? I build relationships through good communication, through making sure I'm very clear with what my expectations are. You have a great group of highly trained professional colleagues here. And what an organization needs is they just need, a lot of times they need that clarity. The clarity comes from you, the clarity comes from the city manager, it comes from department directors, it comes from everybody. But if you've got that clarity there on what your intent is, that's a key point. One of the things that I do that I very much value is going into the departments and divisions every year. And sometimes it means I'm needing to go in at 5 o'clock in the morning to go on shift with patrol. Or something along those lines. So I have to fletch my schedule every once in a while, but that's not that often. But it's having quarterly meetings, having when, what I like to do is I've been trying to promote within the organization is all department directors at least have a quarterly meeting within their departments every quarter, and then other meetings, I'm talking a big one. And being present for those, being present for some of their smaller group meetings. Just showing up and providing a recognition card for a job well done with a thing of donuts to the streets crew. It's those type of things that I get to know them a little more, but I tell you that the best part is going out and working with people. And then at the end of the day, you break bread and you get to know so much more about them. They get to know so much more about you. And that's when the good conversation occurs on how and what things can happen. Because in general, like I mentioned before, we're all here to build community, and there's special skill sets that everyone is hired for. But there's so much more that they have to give besides that special skill set. You just have to spend the time in order to make sure that that communication line gets open to where you can get that different viewpoint. Sending out weekly, I send out weekly city manager reports and ask for information. I try to promote what they do. It's that communication both ways. Hey, tell me what you're doing so I can promote it, and let me tell you what we're doing, and it's making sure everyone is on the same page.
Let's talk about lawyers. No one likes to talk about lawyers. I just wanted to get a feel for what your relationship has been like. You said you've been a city manager for 20 years.
20 years.
What your relationship has been like with your city attorney's offices, and what do you envision your role as the Sparks city manager in working with my office and our 12 employees?
Great. Have excellent relationships with legal counsel. They're key to so much, both from a standpoint of either working with contract attorney firms or with in-house city attorneys. And the city attorney's office, I would hope and would be expected that they're part of the executive team, and that we are all one team working together. I bounce a lot of ideas off the city attorney. And that's just been my historical go-to for, and along with the assistant city managers is to get some of those concepts and ideas. Just like anything HR, I'll bounce off of the HR department or go to pre-loss before anything happens. It's just the right thing to do. Even if you think you know what it is, just to get that confirmation of, oh, hey, I was on the right, maybe I could have been an attorney. No, but no, I think it's really key, to have a really good, healthy relationship with the city attorney's office. I don't know what else to say about that. I
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked with an independently elected city attorney's office, or has your experience been with appointed?
It's always been appointed. It's been that I've either appointed or I've hired the firm itself. Josephine County, where Grants Pass is the county seat, does have an elected legal counsel, and worked with the county on a number of issues with the elected legal counsel. I don't see any issue with it at all, whether they're elected or they're appointed. They are the city attorney, right? So, yeah.
I agree. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more, Mr. Abbott?
I'll do one more. How should the community of Sparks, including us, staff, and residents as a whole, measure your success if you were to become the city manager of Sparks? Had to ask a decently hard one, at the end,
Well, I know. This is, how do you measure the success of the city manager? There's multiple ways I think you can measure the success of a city manager. One is through the satisfaction state surveys that I am a believer in. So you can get an idea of what the pulse of the organization is and where we need to improve. You can do surveys of the community to see how policies are being implemented and how well they're being followed, et cetera. So there's community surveys you can do also. Is the city manager actively engaged? Do you see that city manager making a positive impact in the community in some form or fashion, and not necessarily from a role of 8 to 5 type of thing, but in general, are they seen and supportive of community's desires on things that are happening? You know, a lot of times, city manager might be blamed for a council thing, or council might be blamed for a city manager thing or something like that, but we're all one big team. So I think also seeing the success of the city manager and seeing if it as successful as, how well is council working together? How well is council and staff working together? How well is council staff and the community together? I think from my perspective, it's one of the things that I try to facilitate, and it's a great concern of mine. My relationship with council, my relationship with the organizational colleagues, and my relationship with the community. And then all three of those, how are they linked together? That is a key, that's a very important piece, and it's always on my mind for me as a city manager.
Vanderbilt?
So, and then to highlight, not only satisfied, but are we, and this is a great way to look at data. How are we doing? Are we a lean machine? There's lots of data out there that'll state, you know, how many per capita and what is the average and what's our rates here and that kind of thing. How are we doing from a community development standpoint? What's our turnaround time on plan review checks and those kind of things? Those are all metrics that can be utilized to help with how well the city manager and the organization is doing.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, you got anything else?
Just one last one. So you've done a great job. Actually, I would even say my peers up here have done a great job of asking you a lot of questions, and they've exhausted all of them pretty much that I had. But I'd just like to say, is there any additional information that you'd like to share with us that you did not mention in the question or the answers to our questions?
Well, one, I guess, I would like to conclude, if this information that I haven't provided to you, is I have a true desire to be a part of this community. And I've very much look forward to this whole process. You know, I do a lot of some of my best thinking when I run. And 2 weeks ago, I was running and this popped into my head because I was thinking, man, it's been such a long from the first interview to the second interview. And I almost was feeling, waiting for this to happen today and tomorrow was almost like when I was a kid around 9 years old, and I'd go up to my grandma and grandpa's house in Portland. And they lived in a house that was built in 1903, and it has the really tall ceilings. And my grandpa would always get the big Christmas tree. And I was always excited and wanting to go up there, and that was just really cool. And these past few weeks from the first interview, I've been really excited, just like I was that little kid. And now I'm here, and it's like it's Christmas Eve, it's Christmas morning, and I'm peeking down around the corner. Oh, I see big presents underneath it. I'm gonna go around up and find my sister. I have a giddyish joy about just the ability to have gotten this far and for you to consider me as a finalist. And I just want to tell you, I thank you and appreciate that. That is a reflection upon how you present yourself and how the organization presents itself. It is an opportunity that I take seriously and just want to appreciate that.
Libby?
Paul just asked my last question. I'm good.
There?
If this,
I still have 3 questions, so.
if this opportunity were given to you, when could you start?
So my contract states 60 days, although I have had some preliminary discussions with the mayor and council members. If I was chosen, I am prepared to provide them with options immediately, to give them a couple of options. One, to do an internal candidate, or to also, we have, through the League of Oregon Cities, we have interims that come in. And so once that was secured, there could be some flexibility on that timeline. But to give you, it would be at no later than 60 days.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you an ICMA graduate?
Yes, I am. Well, yes, I am an ICA credential manager.
Okay. How do you view that course? I have my own opinion
Oh,
on
huh?
it, but I'm curious of your opinion on that course.
So, well, I like it. I think that it's very positive, and I think it provides good fundamental framework for what it takes to build a healthy culture, whether it be in your own team or group, or it be within an organization. Some of it is just common sense for a lot of people, but when you get the theory down, and you reinforce that through their teachings and what they've done, it was life-changing for me from a management perspective. I really appreciated that class and appreciated ICMA's leadership on that.
But does your management style take into consideration succession planning?
Yes.
A long tradition at Sparks.
Boy, that is the most effective and efficient way to do things if you make sure that you've got the right people in place and you provide them opportunities. We are looking at succession planning in all avenues, especially when it comes to department. I've got a number of my department directors ready for succession, and another one stepping in within the next 3 to 5 years that I think will be able to fill the gaps, no problem. So the mentoring and the succession planning is key. Where we're having trouble with that succession planning is in the level certifications for like water, wastewater, stormwater. When it takes a class 4 cert and it takes years to do that, we can't find them in the state. They're not out there. They're so few and far between. And to get those individuals that are currently on staff to want to step up to that, we try to incentivize, and it's just not there. So we're still having to go outside for some of those things. But where possible, we are always trying to do succession planning. That is a key. Because with succession planning, it not only affects that one individual, but it affects multiple other individuals. If you take a captain and you move that captain into the chief position, then you're looking at moving a lieutenant into the captain position and a sergeant and a lieutenant, And so that there just reinforces that we value our colleagues and want to invest in them.
And the corniest question that I ever ask is, what's your first 100 days look like should you get the job?
First 100 days, well, the first week or two, it would be doing a lot of meet and greets with people and a lot of walking around the departments and divisions, getting myself out there. Maybe I need to wear a shirt that says "the new dude" or something like that, I don't know, and go around and introduce myself. Setting up standardized meeting times with my executive team members and others, and meeting with them, meeting with each one of you on an individual basis, and asking you and my department directors specific questions. One of the things I would do is I'd ask, can you please give me a tour of your community through your eyes? I want to see it through your eyes, each one of you, and I would ask the same of the department directors. And then ask general questions about, for instance, what are we doing well that we need to continue to do? What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to start doing? And ask some basic questions. I'd have like maybe 5 or 6 just general questions that I'd like to ask of yourselves and of the department directors. And so that would take at least the first two weeks as we're setting that up. And then moving forward, making sure that I get information out there and I meet with some of the press. And then I'm also asking each one of you, along with the department directors, who do I need to see? Who needs to be on my list? What organization needs to be on my list? And then following through outreach through that. Reading through, more so than I have now, the budget documents. Getting to know the financials better within the city, having some set times with finance to go over that so I have a better understanding of the finances is another key as we're moving forward through this. Just getting to make sure to know that is a key piece. And then getting out there with regards to all the different departments and divisions, having those meetings set up, and starting to come up with ideas and concepts. No major changes, but let's take a look at what might be out there and give you an idea at the end of that 100 days of what I might be looking at for, hey, here's some maybe small wins that we'd like to do. Some things that I'll be doing with X team that we'll just initiate on our own. Here's some things that maybe it would be nice from a policy perspective that we take a look at and move forward from there.
All right. This is your last opportunity to ask questions.
We'll see him tonight.
What's that?
We'll see him tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, greatly appreciate this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah.
Yes, please, I need one.
Russell. order the council meeting. Deanne, you can come all the way up here by that green light. I know John told you to stop halfway, but Ollie? Deanne, we give you an opportunity to say something at the beginning, opening comments, and then we're gonna ask a series of questions.
Sounds great. Well,
Yep?
appreciate the opportunity to be here today in front of you. Obviously, a very thorough process, appreciative of that. Goes to show a lot about how you take this to be a very serious and important position as you move forward, and I'm appreciative of that. I think you've left no stone unturned, and I have no doubt at the end of the day, you're gonna land on a good candidate, whomever that may be. But I thank you for the opportunity. I wouldn't be over here today if I was not highly interested in the position, and I feel fortunate to sit in front of you and looking forward to the next step.
Okay. Well, let's start with the city attorney this time.
Good afternoon.
I'm gonna, yes, stick the lawyers on him right away.
I just asking you to be reflective for a moment. If you're looking back over the last 5 years of your career in your leadership position, from a leadership perspective or a leadership skill set, what have you improved on over the last 5 years that you weren't as good at 5 years ago, and that you feel like you've improved it on? And then what is, prospectively, what is something that you feel like I need to work on and you want to improve on, and how would you get there?
Sure, good questions. I think as you grow in an organization, the first thing that happens is your vision gets a lot wider, and you have to recognize you have to let go of certain things, and you have to leverage, the folks that you have working for you more so, and have that faith and confidence and trust in them. You have to create opportunities for the good collaboration, for those teams to plug in and understand what the left hand's doing, what the right hand's doing, and different stuff related to where you're trying to go. And I think that's something that has taken some polish, because I want to be involved. I want to be a part of, not to micromanage, but to be a part and understand it. So I think that's something where I've had to evolve and grow. I think one of the best ways to do that is the people that you work with and around. If you've got good people around you and you see what they do, what they're capable of, how they interact. My boss is a prime example. He is a great collaborator. He does a fantastic job of finding ways to connect groups together and come up with creative solutions and how you're going to address things and what everybody's role is. And I think at the end of the day, you understand the roles. And if you do a good job at that, oftentimes success follows. With regard to the second part of your question, I think things that are harder for me, if you will, I'm a perfectionist, and I struggle sometimes when we're really, really close to where I want to be, but we're not there yet. And I beat myself up a little bit over that, and I chew on those things, and I think about those things, about how could we do a little bit better. And I think there's just always that grind to make sure that we're performing at the highest level we possibly can, and we're controlling the things we can control. We can control effort. We can control attitude. We can control approach. We can control organization. We can control those pieces as we go into something. And you're limited to a degree, too, with the resources that you have, and you have to understand that at times. But it doesn't change the fact that it's really, really important to acknowledge success, too. And I think at times I struggle with that, because in my mind, for me personally, I think about what I could do different. How could I have done that better? When I walk out of here today, what am I going to think about? How could I have answered that question better? How could I have done this better? So, similar thought.
Mr. Abbott?
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Describe how you would build and maintain a positive relationship with the city of Sparks. We have many employees that are, working, some of them 24/7 shifts, weekends, holidays. How would you work on those relationships and building them as the new face of our city?
I think all relationships are built over time. It's what you put into the relationship. And I'm not gonna have the first day, everybody's gonna, walk in and go, oh, great, Deion's here and all is well. It's that relationship and that interaction that we have each time. Each one of those is an opportunity to listen, to understand what's important to them, to find out, what's going on in their world. And so I like to approach this, I'm very engaging. I like to go out and be part of it. If you talk to our police chief, if you talk to our fire chief, if you talk to our Parks and Recreation staff, they're gonna tell you, I love to go out and be part of what they do and learn, not to create it or make them uncomfortable, but to learn from them and show them how important they are to us. And at the end of the day, you start doing those things, and if you're a good listener and you deliver on what you say, for instance, they may have an idea, they may have a thought, they may have something that they believe is really, really important to them. If you listen to that and you follow up with what you can, you may not be able to do exactly what someone wants, but if you can get back to them and provide them the why, and here's where we're at, and the information that relates to that, I find that's a path to success, because at the end of the day, work is done through relationships. I mean, all of us here in this room could probably say, if we picked up a phone, there's certain people we would call for certain things because we know Latree's right. We know they will listen to us. We know how they operate. We know what is important to them. And at the same time, too, it doesn't mean we're gonna get exactly what we want, but you know you're gonna get a fair shake. And I think that's the important piece when you're building those relationships. So I wanna engage, I wanna be part of, a process in a helpful manner, and I wanna be supportive. So.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. Our employees are our most valuable asset, and the city has gone through some changes over the last year. So there's probably nervousness amongst some of our employees. How, when you come in, if you're chosen, will you make our employees feel safe and at ease over this most recent change?
I think open communication, making sure they understand the why. Oftentimes the why is what maybe is not as clear as it could be, and here's where we're at, and here's why. Let's talk about when you're in a structural deficit, there's challenges. You have to act decisively. You have to act quickly. I mean, you've met 6 of your 8 goals, but 2 of them you haven't. The CIP piece you're a little short on, and I think on your salaries and versus your services, you're a percent-ish and change above that. But you're close on those things. But at the same time, too, when you're talking about 19 positions that are not part of it, I think 17 in the general fund, a couple out of your special recreation fund, that hurts. And then you leverage that as you're talking about how important special events are. Use that as an example. And all the events that you have and the staff that supports those, it can be daunting, right? Because when they are part of making those things happen and those resources shrink, that's hard. And I think you have to own it. It is hard. It's difficult. It's challenging. But I think explaining the why, having open conversations with them, talking through those pieces matter. And when you do that, you're not, again, not everybody's going to agree, and it's not going to be perfect, but you want to be open and engaging on that front where you share that. And I think that's my approach, or would be my approach on those types of things. And if somebody has ideas, well, let's talk through those. Maybe there's a different way X, Y, Z could be done. Maybe there's a different way we could approach this. Maybe, the juice isn't worth the squeeze on a few things. We can shift a resource from here to there to try to produce a better result. But there's likely not big things that can be done, or they would have been done. But incremental change over a period of time, that adds up and makes a difference, right? And if you can find ways to become adaptable and agile in those environments, staff are the best resource for it because they're the ones doing all the work. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dion, thank you for being here with us. So my first question for you is, when it comes to your decision-making process, at what time do you involve others and why?
I'm a big believer in collaboration. Anytime I can collaborate, I want to, because I just think you get better results with that. And I'll use, again, where I've cut my teeth in some of the organizations I've been a part of, that's been a critical piece to our success, is you get a lot of people in the room. I say a lot. You get people in the room who are associated with XYZ issue that you're talking about, and you beat it up from different angles, whether it's a legal angle, whether it's an operational angle, whether it's a monetary angle. But if you've got those people sitting at the table as you're walking through those, I think you just make better, more informed decisions early on, and the collaboration early matters. And I think that's a key piece of it. Collaborate early so you're working through some of those varying challenges that inevitably something is going to come up and you're going to have to deal with, and how equipped are you to handle that? But I can't say enough. you also have to be willing to fail and fail fast sometimes. If something doesn't go right, fail and fail fast and move to the next thing. Learn from that, and you certainly don't want to make reckless mistakes, but if you've got good collaboration, you also get good buy-in. So you get buy-in a little bit from a little bit wider scale, and I think that's helpful as well when you move forward with whatever solution you land on.
Spivey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Deanne, this is the first time in a long time we've gone outside. We've always hired from within. So that in and of itself is something different for the city and for our employees. What do you see from what you've learned about the city and from your experience? What do you look at if you were offered this position as your biggest challenge that you face? And maybe would that be your first priority, would be addressing that? But what do you see as your biggest challenge?
Well, I think obviously the primary role of the city manager, one of the primary roles is to bring forth a budget that's balanced and in alignment with state law and those pieces. So I think first and foremost, if you want to look at one of the biggest challenges, it's that. And you look at the 25 projections, the 26 projections, you see some of the movement there, using the unrestricted fund balance, if you will. I think you're going to end up in the 10% range. I think financial services like to see it more 12.5. It's been anywhere from 5 to 25. Some of those are a little bit misleading though, because we probably had some one-time ARPA dollars that contributed to that. So it maybe looks a little bit better in certain years than it was. So I think that'd be my first focus related to that. But how would I go about integrating? If you're talking specifically citywide, I think two things would be important. Number one, engagement. I want to engage with council. I want to understand what's important to them. I want to understand what meeting schedules do you like? Where do you want to receive information? How do you want to receive information? What's the best way to go about that? I want to engage with staff. I want to get out there and hear from them and learn from them and listen to them and have that piece. And then thirdly is the community. We get out there and talk to our various groups, our various business leaders, have those conversations to understand what's important to them. So that engagement's piece one. The second piece I would say is more structural related. Like, okay, let's talk about mini SWOTs, if you will, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats by department. So we could look at those and I can get a better lay of the land of what's the high priority, biggest issues as they see it, and we can start talking through those and collaborate. Okay, what's our plan here? What are we thinking? What options do we have? At the end of the day, when we're coming back to you, we certainly want to give you options and we want to have you well informed and have the right information. So at the end of the day, when you're making policy and putting that stuff forward, you have what you need to do that, and it's an informed decision.
Mr. Dare.
Thank you, sir. And hello, Dion. Nice to see you.
How you doing?
I'm good. Well, let's talk for a moment about regional leadership and things that we do. We all serve on multiple boards. We are next to Reno. We're part of Washoe County, and then even do some stuff with some of our neighboring counties and things like that. Can you talk for a moment, just kind of that approach? I mean, for us, we find ourselves a lot of times helping bring leadership to the community. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but I think we have a Sparks way we do things. We really like to make sure that we're in there bringing that to the table. What's your thoughts on that? How would you approach that? Because you mentioned a lot of things right in Sparks, but that's a part of the job. But there's another big part of the job that actually has to do with all this other piece.
Yeah, good question. Regional collaboration to me is very, very important. All of those agencies you're going to work with in some way, shape, or form. You're going to have a host of things where you're part of an outcome and it benefits all of you to find successful results for that. So building that relationship, having an exchange of ideas, but at the same time representing what is important to Sparks. And I think good examples of that, and I'll use Roseville as an example. We chair and sit on numerous regional committees and things like that. We want to be a great partner. We want to work with everybody and be somebody they can count on. We'll listen, we'll collaborate, and we're driven towards quality outcomes. But at the same time, we're not going to compromise who we are and what is important to us and our council. And we want to be transparent about that when we have those conversations. And I think that's part of it too. There's nothing to hide there. This is what is important to our elected officials. This is what is important to our community. How do we work together then? And maybe you have some different things, but that's governance, right? We're laying those pieces out and finding where we have common ground and how we can move forward effectively where all of us have some win. Now, maybe some wins are this big and some wins are this big, but we want to have that relationship so those conversations occur, because there's always more strengths too, when you talk about trying to leverage more dollars or trying to move forward with maybe bigger projects, to have other assets that are supporting, if you will, that same project, that same approach, that same, maybe funding source you're going for in an earmark as an example. But things like that are important.
Get another question.
Sure, I'll throw it in there. So the big elephant in the room, and obviously you mentioned on budgeting, and cities in Nevada, in my belief, are not sustainable because of mainly our property tax and things of that fashion. Our lands bill is sitting out there. We are very optimistically pushing and prodding and doing everything we can because we have to for survival. What is your role? How do you see that? I mean, obviously, if you were stepping in, you'd be stepping in the middle of us pushing on all these fronts, but we obviously need somebody to grab that flag and wave it high. So how would you wave that? What do you think about that?
Engagement. I think you want to engage with the parties. You want to understand the moving parts and what are the nuances that are going on, what conversations have occurred, what, has happened prior to, so you have some history with that. But at the same time, you want to engage on those fronts because, as you mentioned, when you walk through these, using the Public Lands Management Act piece as an example, I mean, you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about conservation, you're talking about outdoor recreation, you're talking, those types of things. In Henderson, we were fortunate enough that the SMPLMA, or Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, was something we were very successful with, and I've seen what that can do. When I left Henderson, we probably had secured in the neighborhood of 100 million. They're probably closer to 250 million today, just to give you an idea of what the scale of that can be. And there was some great stuff done with that. But when you look at those on that front, I think you have to engage. So if that's important, how do we engage? How do we find the right pieces there? We use a lot of, for instance, our government relation folks to go in and plug in Roseville, and they do a terrific job keeping us informed. We like to be the one who briefs with various elected officials, so we're seen as the expert. So when we step in the room, we carry some weight because they've seen us. We've been in front of them. We've talked with them. We have been the one who's providing some of that information. You look at economic development. How are you looking at your land plan as an example and making sure your land plan today still aligns with what opportunities are out there, and how do you parlay those and make sure it fits? We had a tour today and looked at a new industrial site that's being developed close to Fire Station 6 out there, and how, there's some movement there, and how you're trying to, again, generate some property tax from that. On the property tax front, I think everybody in here would say that, the formula is probably not favorable to, sustainable growth. You look at the budget. Your revenues grow 4.4% projected next year, right? But expenses, unfortunately, are exponentially higher than that. And when you add those things up, there's not a single piece that would make, that's easy to pluck, but you want to go look at all of those, because which one's going to bear fruit first? And that, I think it's important to have those relationships, have those conversations, be talking to the right people, so as those come up, you're involved in the conversation. You want to be at the table, is what I'm saying. And for those types of things, we want to be at the table. We want to be there to talk about them and represent where we're at and what's important to us.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do you view your role with the community? If you're selected for this position, describe specifically how you would propose to become engaged in the community.
Great question. My approach would be, let's identify some of those business leaders out there that are important to us, where we can go out and reach out to start building relationship. Let's look at our service organizations, how we go plug in with those. Let's look at our development community, have those types of meetings, understand what they want. Let's go maybe even reach a little bit and get into the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center and talk to some of those key folks out there to see what they're looking for in various pieces, that maybe there's some property that we have that would be great to develop for X, Y, Z, but the engagement has to be intentional and purposeful. And when you go in there, you need to be organized and ready to go. And a lot of times, let me just say, it may be as simple to start the conversation as, hey, here to talk today, just want to introduce myself. We are here. We are motivated to try to produce great results for Sparks. How can we help you? And that starts the conversation. Versus going in sometimes a little too aggressive with an ask, and maybe that quickly closes a door. So you want to be seen as collaborative, you want to be seen as a partner, you want to be seen as a win-win. And I'll point to, I'll throw credit to our economic development team right now in Roseville. We have been fortunate enough to land Bosch. They're going to invest in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion in a facility there. And there's a lot of spinoffs that come of that. So we sent a contingent back to Germany with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, with our mayor, our vice mayor, development services director, economic development director, electric director, because all these pieces were part of it. They met with literally hundreds of different people. Most of that was related to what was needed to support Bosch. And then we understand what we have available, what our land designation is, how we look at those things to see how do we parlay that perhaps to produce results. I can tell you there's two of them that as of today, they're not officially in yet, but we feel confident it's moving that direction.
Okay, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. So, please tell us about a time that you faced a major problem affecting your organization and the community. And then go on to share how you communicated with all the stakeholders and how did you let them know that you were going to handle it?
I'll use a Roseville example. Henderson's probably a good one too. When we went through the Great Recession, that was a very, I'll start with that one. In Henderson, we went through the Great Recession. We had a very high level of service, and that became the expectation for the community. And as those resources plummeted and they didn't slide down, they did that. We had to react relatively quickly, and we had to do and take actions that were not necessarily favorable. How do we approach it? Let's have a great communication plan. Let's make sure we're open. Let's make sure we're transparent, because our staff too, the effect that it had on them was great, because to their credit, the investment that they had and the pride that they took in what they do and did, it was awesome. We had a great team. And when you start taking resources away, it's easy to erode. Well, this isn't as important anymore. So we really focused on the two fronts, our great communication to the community, and then make sure our staff understand the why. And they were part of the process as we went through and were identifying things. Staff was part of what we were looking at to help us figure out where we could do that. Roseville example is a little bit different. When I first came to Roseville in 2016, we were still not super healthy financially. We weren't bad, but we were not super healthy financially. So parks are a very important piece to Roseville and the community. We had two general fund parks, as an example, that were citywide parks that we had the money to build the park. And these, the public had been clamoring them for a long time. These were bigger parks. We had the money to build it. But what we didn't have is the ongoing dollars to maintain it. So we're having to have those conversations in the community. What do? We went to neighborhood associations and spoke. We went to, some of those influential folks in the area and said, hey, here's where it's at. Let us explain how we're working through this. Here's our approach to this. We leveraged ways to talk about how we could perhaps move it forward, maybe one park or the other. And those were not very fun conversations, because people wanted their parks. And they'd been promised those parks for a long, long time. And again, to say you have the money to build it, but you don't have the money to maintain it, that was a tough conversation. But that's the approach we took. And again, not trying to hide anything. We want to be transparent. We want to give you the why. And we want to be out there in front of the messaging and not let the messaging get in front of us.
Vanderwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Homelessness is an issue, of course, nationwide. We just recently passed a policy regarding homeless living in their cars. How are you handling homelessness in your community?
Okay. We approach it through what's called a 48-hour notice. So in our parks, you're not allowed to sleep overnight. In our open space, you are. But you have to pick your stuff up and move the next morning. So we have our social services unit, which is in ways very similar to your HOPE team. And that's embedded police officers with our social service practitioners. And they go out and engage with the community, and we're always, the first choice is services. We want to connect you to services. And I would point blank tell you, it is our belief if somebody wants a service, we can get them connected to that service. But if they are in the open space and have set up camp, so to speak, we will tag it with a 48-hour notice. That gives them time to move it and relocate and get themselves organized. But if they do not, we will remove it. And so then we will send a team in there to remove that. That was pretty painful the first year because it took just a lot of bandwidth to get everything somewhat cleaned up. But since we've done that, our frequency is about the same, but the amount of stuff that we're moving is far, far, far less. So we've had some success on that front. The other piece I would tell you too, in full candor, is if we have individuals who are creating a lot of disturbance, a lot of calls for service, causing issues, we recognize we can't arrest our way out of the problem. We also too don't want to take the enforcement option out of the tool belt, so that is applied where and when applicable as well. That's not our first choice, and certainly services is where we want to go, but we keep that in the tool belt as well to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, we're doing all we can to maintain quality of life, to maintain that business environment that perhaps that people want, safety on trails, et cetera.
Rabbit.
Yep. I know you enjoyed a lovely tour of the city today. So I guess what was the most impressive thing, and what you saw, is there anything, I know it was a short, quick tour, is there anything that you might want to just change or have a suggestion already?
I don't know that I'd go that far. I did ask some questions and got some great answers, and I think that's where you start with anything, is you ask questions and you get answers. For instance, I asked, hey, have we considered, naming rights, for instance, for Golden Eagle? I was informed because it's BLM property, that's not an option at this point, but that was one thing that popped into my head. The other thing, I think, when you talk about criticality a little bit as we explored it further, and I've done some reading through the comprehensive plan and some of that, but you talk about, your capacity at the water reclamation facility. Pretty good on the gallons per day, I think 44-ish million, but the nitrogen piece and the 500 pounds and hearing that, where that's at and what growth could do to that and what options and opportunities we have there, that'd be something I'd want to dive in and understand more. Not that the team's not doing great stuff and fully, but I'd want to understand that. So again, you're always looking for opportunities in those types of instances when you're in the right conversation to have that information so you can engage and you can be, in a spot to help. I'm going to twist the question a little bit, but I would tell you too, when you look at opportunities like this, you look through a couple lenses. You look through the professional lens, right? And candidly, the professional lens, how stable is council? I watch council interact with staff and how they treat them. I watch how they go about the questions that they ask. All that's part of what you're looking at from my chair to see if this is of interest, but you also watch the staff piece too, and watching the staff present to you and how well received they are, how educated they are, how informed they are. That's impressive. When you step into a role like that, you want folks that have it. I watched your CIP presentation, I think it was Monday, and impressive. I mean, I think Councilmember Bybee had a question about, hey, why are we reselling a road after 3 years? And it was a great answer. She talked about, hey, it's important to get the first one on there after that, so we get that window, and we're staying in that $2 or $3 a square foot versus the $13 a square foot. It was a great answer. But you watch the staff and I watch council give praise back to the staff. That's the type of stuff that attracts you. And then certainly the personal piece, if you will. You're looking for quality of life. And what's the things that cook into quality of life? Well, it's maybe a little different for all of us, but the people that want to move here, it's similar to that because you would be moving to a community. And I think this checks a lot of those boxes. So I'd be remiss to get too far ahead and say I would do this or that, but you start with asking questions and understanding.
Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your various roles, in various municipal roles that you've had, if you could describe for us your relationship with your city attorney's office, and then how would you envision your role as city manager's office having a relationship with our city attorney's office, has about 12 employees?
Good question. We have a fantastic relationship with our city attorney's office. They are partners. And that's exactly how we see them. We want them setting at the table early. Our city attorney sits on our executive team now. It's the city manager, two assistant city managers, city attorney, CFO, but as part of that team, and then our economic development director and our deputy city manager. But as part of that, when we're talking and discussing things, as we're looking, that's a great tool when we're doing that to understand, hey, here's some of the potential pitfalls that are out there from a legal perspective. And you look at, here's some from the financial perspective. Here's some from, and you're looking at those in a more totalitarian, if you will, or total view. And that's important when it comes to the decision making because you're getting great advice early. And we see it truly as a partnership. I'll use our existing city attorneys. They're awesome. They truly are because they listen and they help us work through what options we have. And sometimes we may not, as the trying to do something, love the option that's there, but it's great collaboration and great back and forth, and we push each other. So at the end of the day, we're landing on something that makes sense. So critical, in my opinion, to have them in the room for the discussions and be part of it early.
Mr. Abbott,
I'll double up.
got another one?
I'd be
You know, when you
interested,
give an attorney an inch.
and a mic, it's,
Is he by the hour?
It's all love. It's
No,
all said with
no.
love, Wes.
got me for a while. So I want to ask you in terms of thinking about the job of city manager, and if you're thinking about that one attribute, it's not a sufficient attribute for the job, but it might be the necessary attribute for the job. What is that one attribute that when you say a city manager, he or she has to have this? What is the this?
Oh. I'm gonna go resiliency, because you are going to travel some highs and some lows, some ups and some downs. And when your desire is to produce the best possible result, and this is back to the Dion piece here, and maybe you're a little short of the mark that you had in your head, you better have some resiliency and be in a spot where you've got the mental fortitude and toughness to get yourself in a spot to know you're always applying yourself in the best way you can. Again, back to the prepared, back to bring that great attitude, back to don't let someone outwork you, Dion. And I think that's part of it, right? Is that you want to be in a spot where you're doing those things and it's producing a result. But resiliency is important because there's going to be some downs. But how you respond in those downs is quite telling, right? For all of us. It's easy to, when things are great, to have a smile on our face and move forward. But when things get hard, the chips are a little bit, not in your favor, so to speak. It's hard. How do I respond to that? Well, I better do it right. I better be resilient. I better bring the right attitude to that.
Okay, Mr. Abbott.
With the last person that you promoted, could you describe kind of that person and what led you to promote them over the other candidates that were there?
We hired a Parks, Recreation, and Libraries director from out of state. Given my preference, I would much prefer to hire from within. I believe we should do the best we can to grow our own, to create succession plans, to put those folks in place. But what led me to her? Number one, her value of staff. And if you go talk to all her people, and I say all, that's an exaggeration. If you talk to a lot of her people, she is highly, highly respected by her team. Highly respected. And that was probably the driving force. The second thing is great experience. She has diverse experience, but she's also came from an agency that at the highest level, the biggest organization out of Johnson County, Kansas, they won the gold medal, they're accredited, so their agency has performed at an exceptionally high level. The third piece of that is some of the regional collaboration, except I'm gonna go hers with the national collaboration. She was plugged into a lot of things nationally that we were interested in being a part of, so as different things and legislation was discussed, we wanted a seat at the table as part of that. And then lastly, she's just a good person, and she is humble but motivated, and she is so genuine, and her integrity is beyond reproach.
Ms. Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my fellow councilmen asked about working with regional collaboration and things like that. So not only do we have to work here regionally, but we also have to work with our state and federal electeds. So how do you handle that currently, and how would you handle it in your new position here?
we have a fairly robust program, particularly with our utilities, with our engagement at that level, because legislative, as everyone in here is probably quite aware, when you start talking about reclamation facilities as an example, there's a lot of legislative hands involved in that, so we're very active on that front. It's the build relationships again. When something comes up, we want to send our people to speak on it, whether that's at the Capitol in DC or whether that's at the Capitol here. But we also, our mayor spoke, for instance, last week at the Capitol in California. And we want to make sure they're prepared, they have the right information, they hit the window that they're supposed to hit. And we are putting our best foot forward to represent Roseville in a way that so if and when opportunities come, we're in a spot that, I think I bumped that, we're in a spot that hopefully helps produce good results on that. So you have to be engaged, you have to be plugged in on that front. The other piece too is you have to pay very close attention as things come out and are available. How agile and nimble are you? What do you have that's shovel ready? What do you have that's in a position that you might be able to advance it? Because a lot of the portal windows that you're talking about for earmarks, they're not super big. And then there's other moving parts there too. Can you produce the project within the window with which the funding's going to go? And I'll give an example. We put in for Blue Oaks widening. That's one of our arterials. We put it in August, and it was written in the bill in August, but I think it was last weekend. It was actually when it was signed. So again, you go through that period where you're still project planning and trying to figure out how you do it and making sure you're ready to go, but at the same time, you're agile and nimble enough to know, hey, we'll take that $3.3 million and leverage it with what we have and move our project forward. So I think that's part of it too, is just that you're plugged in and you've got the right people looking at stuff so it becomes available. You either get the call because you have the relationship, or you're looking at the right sources and asking the right people, hey, where are we at with this? What's happening with that? And you're in the know, knowledgeable.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, sir. Dion, what would you say is your professional passion, and how have you used that to move things forward in a positive way?
Relationship building. I mean, just engagement and build relationships. I truly believe, I probably sound like a broken record, but that is to me, the DNA that gets stuff done. And I want to make it genuine. I want to make it real, not fake and not, something that's disingenuous. I want it to be real. I want to build a good relationship. And so when we talk and we partner and we look through things and we're dealing with an XYZ, we're having an honest conversation and we're truly trying to produce results on that front. Me personally too, I think part of that too is I want to bring the right energy, and I want to make my own weather, right? I can control that. I want to bring that in. So that helps. You talk about leadership styles, and I don't believe anybody has, maybe some, I don't believe most people have a singular leadership style, one only. I think it's a hybrid of things and pieces like that. If you ask me, certainly servant leadership, I want to put others in front of before me, but I think transformative too, where you've got energy, zest, passion, where you bring that to the table and you start combining those pieces, and that's where it helps to produce those results too. And lastly, I'm probably giving you a word salad here, but I would say emotional intelligence. I'm just a big proponent of that and understanding the nuances and the moving parts and what's happening. So when you go into those conversations, you know what's important to someone. You've put yourself in a spot to be able to appreciate their position.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The leadership style of the city manager is critically important to the city's success. How would staff in your current organization describe your leadership, both positively and negatively, and why?
Good questions. Well, they're probably watching right now. You can probably give them a jingle. And I probably got a chuckle out of them too. I think that they would tell you that I care, and that's probably the greatest thing, is I'm invested and I care about results, but I do it in a manner that's not authoritarian and not over the top, but I'm motivated too. Don't take me that I'm not serious, because I'm highly competitive, and they would tell you that as well. I want to win, and I don't always win, and that's sometimes not my favorite thing in the world, as I'm sure a lot of you, but at the same time, I think that's important. If you ask a weakness for me, I'll tie it back to what I said before, that I have that sense of perfection. Sometimes I will beat myself up over perhaps something that's not that big of a deal, but it bothers me. But I will tell you too, I think it's important when you give staff the reins and you give them some autonomy, which is absolutely should happen. You got to give them some room to roam a little bit, right? Now you've got the big box, if you will, that you probably can't color out of those lines, but you've got room to maneuver, and then you want it to be there. So they have ownership, they have a passion in it, they believe in what they're doing. So I think that's part of it too. And I know it twisted that a little bit, but if I had to pick something on me, again, that hypercriticality that I, charge myself with, I could probably take that down a notch.
She did ask to negative, what would their negative feedback?
That is a negative.
I think that's the negative is probably that I'm asking more questions like, well, I'm a believer we can always get better. And, perfection is the enemy of, you get the idea. But, because I'll ask questions, follow-up questions about, well, okay, what could we have done different? But Deanna, we got a 98.4 on that. Well, could we get a 98.5? And so I think that's something where I have to be careful.
For Darren.
Yeah, so we have quite a diverse community, and I know you come from a diverse community, but just how do you approach that? I mean, for us, we have our seniors who are in fixed incomes, we have our youth, our own kids, some of us that couldn't buy a home if they had to because it's just impossible. We have various income levels, we have growing ethnicities. At the same time, we want to see housing for everybody, and we want to see economic development, and it's just, every one decision you make seems to have unintended consequences somewhere else. So, I don't know, what's your approach? How do you reach out to these different groups? How does that work for you? And what's your view on that?
Yeah, back to the engagement piece, I think when you're talking about community engagement and asking, well, what is important to them, that's the first step. But when you look at the roles that we have, we bring something before the council, we need to make sure we're aligned with council priorities and community priorities. And sometimes that's hard because the resources may not give you the bandwidth to do all that you want to do. But it doesn't change the fact that we want to make sure that highest and best piece is in order. So when we're doing those things, if we understand that, maybe we can't do the entire XYZ, but maybe there's pieces of it we could do. Maybe there's a portion or something of it that we can do, where we're always looking for ways to connect. Maybe we improve this much, and it's not all of it, but it's some of it. And then the other thing I would say on that front, when we go through these processes, right? Part of it too is self-reflection, where what can we do differently, and back to looking at ways, okay, let's think about this. We've always done it this way. That can be a detriment, and it can be a good thing too, but what could we possibly do different? What is it, what's there that we might be able to explore? And I think you have to self-reflect on those things too. The system with which you build processes, so to speak, you don't want it overly structural, but you want it free-flowing enough where you've got that back and forth and that dialogue and that understanding. Because when you're trying to package that stuff up, that's exactly what you're doing, is you're taking a host of different pieces and trying to plug it in so you're meeting as many of those needs as you possibly can. The last thing I'll say on that is the interconnectivity of all of the departments. Police and fire, certainly super important. Public safety is super important. But if we don't do a great job in public works and have roads that flow and traffic, well, we might not be able to get, if we can't remove snow to get to emergencies, things like that, interdependency on the other. So you have to make sure we maintain that balance so those services, whatever they may be, can get there. Same thing with parks. If we're not investing in our parks and taking care of those, that can lead to other things. There's an interconnectivity to all that quality of life piece. And us making sure we have balance in that is really, really, really important. And part of that's through your, the budget goals that you've set forth. So you maintain that harmony where we're not getting lopsided, if you will, into a certain area. But we have that harmony and understand the interconnectedness of all the departments, all of them.
And then I think this is probably my final question is, if this was offered to you, when would you be available?
Probably 60 days.
perhaps 45. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask it. He's a question. He stole my last question last time. So really, given all the questions you've answered already, there's always something, I know when you walk out, you'll probably say, oh man, I should have said this, I should have said that. What have we not asked you about that you think is important for us to know about you, and anything else you want to add to this conversation as we close?
Well, I won't bore you anymore. You guys have probably heard me yap enough, but I just thank you for the opportunity. I'm humble, but I'm hungry, and I mean that in the truest sense. I want the position. I am highly motivated to do it, but if I don't, I'm going to hold my head high, and, I did the best, and I appreciate the opportunity to go through all of that with you. I am somebody who I like dialogue back and forth. I love the engagement piece, and if given the opportunity, I would love to have the ability to work with each of you, to work with staff, to work with the community, and make sure at the end of the day, we're moving the needle to make it a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. But I really appreciate truly the opportunity, and I take it seriously.
No questions? No question, no questions? One more?
How should the community in Sparks measure your success if you're chosen as a city manager?
Good one. Well, I think you'd look at like things such as the comprehensive plan, and you look at what are the things that are, they've listed that are important to the community in there. Look at council priorities and how do we score ourselves on those. The comp plan is an example. That small town feel is important. Special events are important. Reinvestment back in parks are important. The arts and some of the pieces there that you're doing are important. You look at those like, okay, what did we do collectively to deliver on those types of services? And hold ourselves accountable to that. But at the same time, communicate that piece too, what we're doing and how it aligns with the resources that we have and how we're approaching those elements. Maybe the second piece to that would be feedback from staff. Hey, what are we not doing that we could be doing that would help us too, right? And how do we make sure we're analyzing those different pieces? And Dion doesn't always have the best idea. He could have some that are not optimal, but if we've got good discussion and staff's engaged in a lot of those, I feel fairly confident we'll produce. And that's what I'd want to do at the end of the day, is leave it better than I found it.
Wes, you good? Okay, I have actually two questions, because you answered one of them. Are you an IMCA graduate, ICMA rather?
I'm not.
Okay. You talked about succession planning, that you're a fan of that. Last corny question that everyone gets in their interviews: what's your first 100 days look like if you're selected?
Probably back to those two pieces I talked about. I think the engagement piece with council, number one, the community and staff. Council, I want to understand what's important to you. How do you want to operate? Do you like weekly briefings? Do you like bi-weekly? Do you like information via email, et cetera? So I'd want to start walking through some of those, building our relationship, understanding those moving parts that are important to each of you. With the staff, same thing, where I'd want to get out and get in front of them to start that process and understand what they go through and what the challenges that they face, and also too, where we really successful, we want to make sure, hey, we don't want to lose this piece because we do this really well. Start to dig into some of those. The community, get out and identify those folks that we want to have a conversation, we want to talk to, get introductions with, and understand, hey, from a business perspective, what are you missing? What do you need? What do you really like? And that would be really important, that first group, again, just that engagement piece. And then secondary to that would be more of what I'll call the process piece, diving in a little bit deeper to some of those things, not super deep, but I would want to have a better understanding of all the key moving parts from each area. So getting out there and doing some type of small exercises, whether it's mini SWATs or something like that, where we can walk through those. So that'd probably be how I would approach that.
Thank you. Is that it? Thank you, Dion.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Comments from the public, Madam Clerk?
I did not receive any comments from the public, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. They only have one public, Andrea. That's exactly it. Announcements from Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I mean, I'm gonna just say one thing. Y'all got a hard decision. Those two guys are very, very good. And if you paid attention, their answers were nearly identical, just phrased differently. So there's gonna be the one thing that changes our minds, but you're gonna get, if you wanna go through what is gonna happen next, Chief, so that everybody's aware.
Sure. Next, obviously, tonight, we have the meet and greet over at the Richards Way Gym, about 6:30. Candidates will be in front of local media for about 5 minutes each. Give them a brief introduction, and then we'll kind of do the speed dating, if you will. We'll move them from table to table we've invited our committees and the public as well. Tomorrow, they will start off early morning again with a visit to the police department and a briefing and ride along. Then they'll transfer over to the fire station. They'll come back to City Halls. One of them will spend an hour with the 3 primary unions. Good luck on that. And then the other one will be visiting City Hall staff, and then we'll switch. So, yeah. And then after that, we're going to have a little lunch with department heads, and they'll be on their way. And then I'll be in front of you on Monday asking for your direction.
Information you're providing the council.
Yeah, and probably late tomorrow night, we have created evaluation forms for employees that were willing to fill those out, and we will have those tonight as well. And then some background that we have done internally in a full report. So I'll provide you that information. So hopefully we'll aid with your decisions.
Homework for the weekend.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say a shout out to all the staff that have been involved in this process because, yeah, it takes a lot to think through it. And likewise, the questions you're asking, the things that you're finding out, it can be critical for us to know that as well. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. This meeting is adjourned.